Thanks, Bill. Welcome everyone to Innovate Newport and the second candidate forum for the 2022 election season. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome the candidates for the at-large seats of Newport City Council. As someone who works every day in our community with the Hispanic and Latino neighbors to build access to services and pathways to civic involvement and leadership, I'm looking forward to hearing the goals and visions of these candidates just as much as you all are. Our candidates for City Council, in the order that they will appear on the ballot on November 8th, are Kate Jessup, Ames Yates, Khamsyvoravong, Smythe, Mark Aramli, Jeanne-Marie Napolitano, and Lynn Underwood Ceglie. This evening's forum will begin with opening statements from each candidate, followed by a series of questions prepared by our host organizations. We have left time in the agenda for questions from the public. If anyone here at Innovate Newport has a question for the candidates, please submit it in writing to one of our volunteers. Volunteers raise their hand. For those of you viewing remotely, you can submit via the chat function, and please direct your chat to the panelists. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for their opening statement and closing statement. Response times for questions will also be 90 seconds unless otherwise noted at the beginning of the question. We have timers here in the front row from the League of the Women Voters. They will hold up a yellow card signaling 15 seconds remaining and a red card when the 90 seconds have elapsed. At that time, I will move on to the next candidate. Earlier, the candidates drew numbers for their order that they will present their opening statements and subsequently answer questions. And without further ado, we will begin. Our first opening statement will be presented by Mark Aramli. Take it away.
I'm Mark Aramli. I've lived in Newport for 14 years. My wife, Ida, and I are blessed to have 3 young children, all born in Newport Hospital, and Newport is our final homestead. Educationally, I earned an MBA from Rensselaer and an engineering degree from UConn. I'm a local business owner, and I started my BetJet company here 9 years ago. I was on Shark Tank. They chased me off the stage, and after getting turned down there, I built BetJet into one of Newport's largest and most successful homegrown companies. We're now selling in 40 countries. I'm running for City Council to bring the same strong business capability and judgment to our city government as I have to my own business. Community service has always been profoundly rewarding to me. In the last 2 years, BetJet has contributed over $200,000 into local community support groups like the MLK Center, Boys and Girls Club, Newport Mental Health, Bike Newport, Child and Family of Rhode Island, and others. I look forward to serving our community to the best of my ability, and the contributions I want to bring to City Council are simple: bringing strong business management capability and business principles to our city government, and most importantly, prioritizing the needs and quality of life for locals first, those of us who actually live here year-round. I've also received 2 thumbs up endorsements. Time is up. I've got to respect that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. And second on our list is Ames Yates.
Hello, I'm Ames Yates. You can hear me, I think. For those that can't see, this is a great turnout. There are a lot of people here. That's a beautiful thing. My mother is here. Hello, Mom. I'm also from Newport. I have always returned here, although I've worked in Valdosta, Georgia for CBS, worked as a local on-air reporter, worked for Bloomberg TV, worked at 2 a.m. That sucked. My father taught me no one owes me anything. And because this has always been home, I have come home and am now also a small business owner. I have a yoga studio called Love Defeats Fear. The name says it all. I have no claws in my back. I'm about radical transparency, and that's what you will get if you vote for me.
Williams. Next is Smythe.
Good evening. So what makes me a good candidate for City Council? Well, not only did I go through the school system as I'm a born and raised Newporter, but I also worked for the school department as a paraeducator for a number of years. I have over 20 years of experience in the hospitality industry, as I've worked for various local restaurants and hotels in sales and marketing and customer service. I also have experience with investment financing, working with Fidelity Investments. But most notably is my 17-year career with the Naval Undersea Warfare Center as a contracting officer and contracts negotiator. I also do work for the National Association for Government Employees as a labor negotiator and a union steward. And I'm also a committee member on the Federal Women's Program with the Equal Employment Opportunity Office. But I'm fortunate enough that I'm able to utilize my PhD in industrial and organizational psychology as a continuous process improvement Lean Six Sigma facilitator. In addition, I also have experience with municipal government, as earlier this year, I served on the Charter Review Commission, and I currently serve on the Tree and Open Space Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I'm sorry, thank you, Steph. Next up is Kate Jessup.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank all of the groups who brought us here together today and all of the individuals in the room who are taking the time out of their day to be here with us to learn more about each of the candidates. I'm an architect and an educational facility planner and master planner. I know how to work hard, collaborate, and execute master planning principles and work for communities. I work for communities, districts throughout New England in working on lots of the same concepts that we are challenged with here in Newport. I've dedicated my career to education, studying pedagogy, and design to create outcomes for students, and it's something that I work on every single day. I believe that for a better Newport, we must listen to the community, engage them, and make sure that we are bringing those community-driven ideas to the table as city councilors. We need to work together transparently in order to rise the tide for a better Newport. As a councilor, I promise to engage thoughtfully with residents for better outcomes for our community, for our students, and all of our 12 months residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Next up is Marie Napolitano.
Good evening. Thanks once again to the Newport League of Women Voters, Newport This Week, and Greater Newport Chamber of Commerce, and the volunteers, community volunteers, and citizens for offering this opportunity to participate in this important election. I'm optimistic about the future as our community is getting back on track from COVID. I recognize that many nonprofits, volunteers throughout the city have stepped up their efforts to help the city out. Council approved the North End Urban Plan and the Transportation Plan connecting the entire city. Bike paths along Connell Highway and next to the rail line. Pell School addition is completed and construction has begun on Rogers. My future goals are threefold: to expand and diversify job opportunities for the future, especially our youth. Expand our economic base and stabilize taxes. And if regionalization is successful, implement a revenue stream for educational and job opportunities for the future. I thank you for your cast support and ask for your vote on Underwood.
Thank you, Jeanne-Marie. Next up is Khamsyvoravong.
I'm running because I love Newport, and I think that this city needs a new generation of leaders who not only understand our community, but who are willing to invest the time to actually listen, and who also have the requisite skill set to hit the ground running on day one, actually implement practical solutions that are going to help our residents continue calling this place home. I was born in Rhode Island, and I grew up in East Bay, and I have seen Newport bounce back from challenges in the past. But what I've been hearing, knocking on over 4,000 doors in every neighborhood in this community, from Newport Heights to the 5th Ward, is that people right now feel changes happen so fast that they don't know how much longer they can continue calling Newport home. I have spent my entire 18-year career working to find the financial and policy solutions that communities like Newport need to remain home to the people that know and love their communities. My name is Xaykham Khamsyvoravong. It is so long that it's actually taking 2 lines on the ballot. But as I told the moderator this evening, I just go by Xay. I'm looking forward to earning your vote between now and election day.
Thank you, Zai. And last but certainly not least, Lynn Underwood Ceglie.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizers of this event and to all of you joining us this evening. I began my civic involvement as the co-president last year, and I am now initiating a new RIDOT safety study at the intersection of Memorial Boulevard and Bellevue Avenue. I am an advocate for public transportation, lead paint violation enforcement, a diverse economy, and affordable housing. I am responsive and I am accessible to the residents of Newport. I am number 7 on the ballot, the very last one, and I'm asking for your vote on November the 8th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn, and thanks, everybody. So we're going to get on to our questions. For our first question, there are 2 parts. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. The subject is housing and short-term rentals. Are the city's current zoning laws, including the recently adopted prohibition on short-term rentals in residential zones, an adequate means of addressing the lack of local, affordable, year-round housing opportunities? And do you support a tiered tax system which would tax non-owner occupied property at a higher rate than those who live in Newport full-time? And the first one to respond is Steph Smythe.
First, I want to say that I do feel as though we should be looking at short-term rentals as it affects our affordable housing. There are some benefits to short-term rentals if it's done in the right way. And that's if, we're able to provide the city with additional income through tax revenues. If it isn't done properly, which seems to be the situation in Newport, then it can result in a decrease in long-term housing availability, which seems to be the problem here. And it can disrupt also the quality of life for any long-term resident who lives next door to a short-term rental home. So we need to consider how the expansion of short-term rentals in our city will also eventually impact our travel and tourism industry and how it affects local hotel production and local economy. So instead of reinventing the wheel and tackling the issue as something new that has never been experienced, I feel as though that we should be looking at other cities that have been successful in handling taxing short-term rentals and how that can benefit Newport's overall economy. And some of those cities are Henderson, Nevada, Lake Placid, New York, San Diego, California. So I think that we need to look at how they're doing things because they have clear policy objectives. They consider racial equity. They engage their stakeholders, and they developed and enforce clear regulations by also providing continuous review of city ordinances. So I think that if we can look at how others have done things, it will benefit us going forward in how we tackle this primary issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jeanne-Marie Napolitano.
I believe what we've addressed in the recent prohibition of Airbnb in residential areas is just a start. If you could hear the phone calls that we received, not only about perhaps noise and other events that occur at Airbnbs, they don't know their neighbors. The parking situation in a lot of cases is not adequate to end more than just 2 people or a family comes. And these are the kinds of complaints that prompted us to take a good hard look at Airbnb and how they operate in neighborhoods. I do believe that there should be a benefit to long-term residents, those who live here year-round. Those who leave their homes or have bought it as a second home, and in the dead of winter, when I get phone calls about a sidewalk not being the snow not being removed, when kids are trying to go to school, it's not our responsibility, but the homeowner's responsibility. They're making the additional money, renting out their property, and certainly there is a business there. And I firmly believe that. I believe that the residents deserve a break so that they can stay in Newport. And I worry about the future of the number of residents in Newport that once they start getting newer tax bills or higher tax bills, if they'll be able to live here.
Thank you, Jeanne-Marie. Lynn?
Yes, thank you. Housing is a major issue in Newport, and it is frankly around the country is affordable housing. And in the North End Urban Plan, which we passed just recently, there are certainly incentives for developers to create affordable housing within those developments. We also, as Jeanne-Marie said, that we deal with a lot of complaints having to do with short-term rentals, which really was the reason for us creating this ban in residential neighborhoods. It's not a blanket ban, it's not a total ban. People who own their homes and live in their homes can rent out by right 2 bedrooms in their homes. So, this really deals with dark houses and part-time residents who own investment properties. I also, this is the two-tiered tax system. We will be having a, actually the General Assembly just allowed us to institute this new tiered system. And we will be having a workshop on it on October 25th, and it will be on our docket on October 26th to create the system so that we can take the pressure off of full-time residents and switch some of the responsibility to part-time residents. You know, one of the things I also want to mention about this short-term rental is that, you know, there has been some criticism about enforcement and how we're going to enforce it, but we have to start with a policy, and that's what we did. We can't enforce something that we don't have a policy. So that's what we did, and that's what we're working toward, is to make people comply with the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Ames?
So year-round residents are who I answer to. And let's say there's someone who owns a property with 3 units. I want to incentivize that individual to rent one of those units to a family or person that's living here year-round, and figuring out ways to do that. We know that short-term rentals cause chaos, and so perhaps expanding the duration. They can make money for the city, and I'm about generating new lines of revenue, creating more revenue for the city, being transparent about where that money goes. So to answer your question, yes, I think that incentivizing property owners to rent out one of the units where others can be Airbnb to a resident who lives here full-time year-round is a good idea.
Thank you, Ames. And Cy.
You know, my father came here as a refugee from Laos, so I have lived the entire food chain of housing, and was thrilled when my wife and I could buy our home in Newport. I think when we think about the housing crisis that we have right here in Newport right now, we need to be listening to our residents and what they're saying. What they're saying right now is that they are one tax increase away from no longer being able to call this community home. What they're saying right now is that if their lease doesn't get renewed, they don't know where they're going to be going. So I think our solutions need to extend beyond just regulating short-term rentals. I think we need to be looking at how we develop a missing middle of housing that this community needs for the workforce that keeps it going every single day. So to that extent, I think we need to be looking at how we go about building out that missing middle of the team for our community. I think we certainly need to be moving with a high level of urgency at taking advantage of the power that the General Assembly gave this community in implementing a lower tax rate for residents who call Newport home full-time. This is not something that we can continue to kick the can on. We need to move swiftly to address it, and this should be the top priority for the City Council as soon as I get out.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you. The first home I ever owned was in Newport. And I remember how proud I was the day the deed closed and I had the first place I could call mine. And I know a lot of folks who've lived here for a long time have that pride of home ownership. There are folks here who've lived here a long time that have to rent. And we really need to look after those folks because that's what the scourge of Airbnbs is doing. It's pushing our locals out. Everything that I will do on city council if I'm elected will be through the lens of Newport for locals first. Does this policy benefit the locals or does it benefit the tourists and the seasonal folks? Airbnbs, they have a right to exist. They're allowed to exist in commercial zones. I agree with the first step that the city council took. It was great. I'm a believer in homeowner rights. And I think if you are actually living in your home, you should be able to rent your rooms because you're monitoring what's happening there. But I would go further. I think the two-tier tax system is wonderful. Newporters need a break on their property taxes. But I would go further in the tax code. 87% of the finances that run this city, 87% of the general fund of Newport, property tax. Are we really responsible for 87% of the city's expenses with the hordes of visitors, the millions of visitors that come through this city? So I would be looking at even further ways for us to harvest tax revenue from out-of-towners, tourists, visitors, and seasonal folks so that those of us who live here year-round can see lower taxes, lower city fees for everything.
Thank you. And Kate?
So I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I agree with most of the fellow candidates. I do appreciate the efforts that the council has made already. However, I do agree that more can be done and must be done to assure that people who choose to make this their home, but all of us included, have the ability to do so. Do I support a tiered tax system? Absolutely. I think it's important that we look at that. I've recently reviewed some information from some financial bodies, some references that have done a lot of research into other communities that have implemented a tiered tax system. And I appreciate the hard work that was done to come up with solutions that would work for Newport, that aren't going to put the burden on some of our existing businesses who also have a hard time maintaining here in Newport. So looking at the ways that we can work this through is really important to making sure we are able to all remain in the place that we love here in Newport. I think one thing that goes without saying is that this needs to be looked at holistically. Just as the North End Urban Plan was looked at in a broad sense, these are issues that need to be looked at just as broadly. When we think about how we got here, where lots of homes were purchased and by businesses, I have some directly next to my home. I have an Airbnb and right next to it, business owns a home. And I think that we need to, again, come up with strategic planning as a council, all of us working collaboratively to make sure that we are preventing these long-term things from happening so that we're doing this before, so we're not playing catch up in the future with things that are already happening in our cities. Yeah.
Thank you all. Okay, for our second question, each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. And the subject is regionalization of the Newport and Middletown school districts. November 8th, voters in Newport will be asked to vote on forming a regionalized school district with Middletown, question number 5. For current city council members, why wasn't the school committee consulted before voting to put this initiative on the ballot? And for everyone else, what pros, cons, and risks do you see with this current proposal to regionalize the 2 school districts? And do you support the proposal? Cy, you're first.
I think the reality is that I, like many voters, continue to grapple with whether or not this regionalization proposal is the right one to move forward with. But we have to regionalize as a community when it comes to our education because the reality is that our schools are not performing where they need to. And we can't continue to live in a state where we have more school districts than we do students in the classroom. The question is this the right proposal for us to move forward with? And I'm working very hard to try and get there on this issue. I want very deeply to be able to support regionalization as proposed. Right now, the process is focused very heavily on the financial benefits. And the reality for many people, whether it's the counselors who have been supporting this or friends in the community, like my buddy Jack who called me this morning on the issue, those arguments are enough for them to get to that comfort point that they think regionalization is the right thing to move forward with. For me, what I am searching for and trying to find the answer to, and will continue to search for right up until I make that vote, is whether or not Middletown's mentality about how we should be handling our public schools and the academic curriculum is right. I was the only candidate that stepped forth and recommended we do something to get a view into this by creating the Academic Advisory Committee, a proposal that I'm thrilled the Newport City Council and Middletown decided to move forward with. But I think they need to start meeting so we can actually get a better idea as to exactly what the educational thought leaders in these communities think about how we should be proceeding with education in our community.
Great. Mark, you're next.
So I'm an engineer and I can't not think like an engineer. And as an engineer, when I make big decisions, I need to collect data. I need to analyze the data. And I need to come to an informed conclusion based on information. Regarding school regionalization, I don't feel there's enough information that I've seen to push me in one direction or another. There are pros, there are cons. As a business person with a business hat, regionalization is clearly a good thing. We save money, our classrooms are shrinking. It makes sense from a business perspective that this is education, this is our children's future, this is not a pure business decision. Newport will lose control of its destiny when it comes to education. There are a lot of open questions I have that aren't fully answered where I simply don't feel comfortable making a decision. I'm seeking more information. I'm waiting for more information. I will say, I think City Council did the right thing in making sure this is a citizen referendum. This is too big a decision for City Council to make on their own. But in many ways, I feel the process has been a little rushed. And for me to have a firm decision one way or another, I need more data, and I'm seeking that data.
Thank you. Next up is Jeanne-Marie.
I support the city's effort for regionalization. And the reason I support it is 3 years ago I supported it. Our population of students went from 1,200 at each high school down to 600 at each high school. Aside from that, the savings that have been offered us can be used and should be used to educate our kids in the way they deserve. Some of the testing has not been favorable in either community. We're suffering from the lack of certain instructors, of certain classes, and we would be able to do that with the extra money. And certainly, I believe that this has been very quick in happening, but it will also be very quick in moving us back. And when we stand still, we don't move forward. We don't move forward. We need to move forward for the kids. It's very important. And it's important, we went from a 25% when I started reimbursement for any schools up to 50.2, and now it's at 80%, including principal and interest. I think that's important. That extra money can go to where it should go and provide the kids, all kids, with their education.
Thank you, Jeanne-Marie. Lynn?
Thank you. I'm going to hold this, it's more comfortable. I do support regionalization with Middletown and Newport. And I came around to this because I see the opportunities that will present themselves for our students. People talk about, well, this is just about the money, but it's the money that funds the programs. It's the money that funds after-school programs, that funds universal pre-K, that funds career and tech, that funds everything in the school. I come from a background where when my children were in the Newport Public Schools, the schools were being level funded. And it was really frightening, actually, because there were programs being cut. And we have come now out of these years of working with the school committee and working with the superintendent to not do that to them. And so we have constantly every year, 2%, 3% increases for the schools because they need the money to run the programs. This is an opportunity to stabilize the finances and to break that cycle of asking. We're also, it's for the students and also I think about people who are on fixed incomes. Someone here on the dais just said that we are one tax increase away from someone not being able to live in their homes. Well, if that is true, then we really need to look at regionalization, and we really need to look at it hard to see if we can make it for our students and for our homeowners.
Thank you, Lynn. Kate?
So I'm very privileged, and this is what I do for a living. I'm an educational facility master planner. And so I work with communities on this exact issue all over New England, and also around the country. My position with the community thus far in attending all of the meetings is to be an advocate for all of the community members and to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to have the questions answered before they go to the ballot box, which starts in 2 weeks. There are so many unanswered questions. I get questions all the time from community members saying, what does this mean? What does this look like? Why are we only talking about money? And essentially, this is my concern, is that we have 2 weeks until early voting begins, and we are still not getting any of the answers that the community has been looking for. I think it's important that we put students before the financing, and as a result, that will allow maybe a different process than what we're looking at right now to be achieved. I promise, as this is my expertise, to continue to advocate for all of you, residents, as well as the students of Newport, whether this passes or not. I think it's important for us to keep asking the question about regionalization, because conceptually it does make sense for this island to have regionalized school districts. And I will make sure that I am asking the right questions on your behalf.
Thank you. Ames?
I'm going to vote for it. I support it. The reason for that is it unlocks millions and millions of dollars that we would otherwise not have access to. And there's an expiration date to that. If we don't support it, then those funds will go away. So to me, it's about where that money goes. You mentioned that there is a lack of teachers. Why not use the money to recruit some incredible teachers? And so to me, these are the conversations we need to have by removing ego from the equation and figuring out what's best. I would like to see more transparency about what it looks like for teachers and students long-term. That said, yes, I'm voting for it. Let's recruit some great teachers and let's focus on students.
Thank you. Steph?
So I support the concept of regionalization in the traditional sense of uniting two schools into one building. I do not support how regionalization is being proposed on the ballot. We've heard about regional school and joint finance committees, economic benefits, and potential offerings for Newport and Middletown. We haven't heard about an education plan with details on the academic benefits, if it will decrease the dropout rate, and how will it benefit the ratio of students per teacher. It also appears that some of the current offerings by both districts, such as an anti-bullying program, has not been included on the potential offerings list. It also concerned me that the biggest stakeholders in this process, the students, were not being consulted on this. Their futures are going to be impacted by this decision, and it's irresponsible to move forward with a process that the way it stands right now will not benefit the students. So no, I don't support it the way that it's being proposed. However, I will support the parents and students any way that I can, regardless of the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next question is related to community development, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. The Newport Bridge realignment will open up developable land, much of which the city intends to make available for private development. What is your vision for the future of this developable land, and how will this benefit the residents of Newport? Ames, you're first.
Well, I think we should have a recreational marijuana dispensary in Newport. I think right now the tax is 10% in this state. 7% goes to the state, 3% goes to the city. I would only entertain bids that are 13%, meaning instead of 0, which we get now, we get 6%. That's new money. So that has to have adequate parking. I'm not saying it has to be in the north end by any means. I'm saying get at a table and find out where the best place is. I also think it'd be a smart idea to have adequate parking there, a big parking lot perhaps, and a trolley system that could pump people, tourists downtown to essentially get rid of an already extremely congested downtown area, which we can all relate to and have seen and experienced.
Thank you. Kate, you're next.
So master planning is an area that I have studied and worked in my entire career. And so I applaud the work that's been done by numerous studies to help find solutions for what this is an example of, this land available as well as other land that's available in the North End. Wonderful reports that I've had the pleasure of reading, North End Equitable Development Strategy, the North End Urban Plan. You know, there are suggestions for what this would be, and the community has been involved in this. So your voices have been heard. And I think it's important that the city council listen to what you've already talked about and discussed and provided your voice as part of. And, you know, some of the suggestions that recently came about were making sure that there's open space for the community to have access to, parklands, places to walk your dog. It's really important that we hold on to that in Newport. There's also ways that we look at the types of spaces that could be put in as far as retail. You know, high-end luxury retail in the North End might not be the appropriate thing for the community. So we need to make sure that we're listening to the reports and studies that are, you know, have dust on them on a shelf somewhere. We need to take those studies back out and listen to what you all have already contributed to make sure that we are bringing that to the council and in the future of how we develop our North End.
Thank you. Cy?
I've got a bit of a background when it comes to development. I still sit on the board of Grow Smart Rhode Island, which is one of the organizations that helped form some of the planning that we've seen on the North End today. Currently work with Coldwell banker Richard Ellis, which is one of the largest developers in the country. And when it comes to that land, I think we need to be realistic about the decision that we're facing right now. What we need to do is ensure that something gets done with that property and that it does not continue to sit vacant and unused as we move forward. The reality is that half that property is owned by a private developer. The other half is controlled by the state of Rhode Island. It'll be released hopefully at the end of the process. But I've sat on the state properties committee for almost 3 years. And I can tell you that we are not going to be getting that land to execute on whatever our vision is, unless there's a unified council behind whatever that plan is. And we work together with a high level of urgency and clarity to work to get that land itself developed. I think that space is perfect for the concept of the blue tech. We start thinking about what Newport needs in the future. We need higher paying jobs, and we sit at the natural intersection of helping our future world deal with the water challenges that we're facing on an emerging basis every single day. So that's my vision for it. That's my view on the process, and I'm confident that we can get that done.
Okay, Mark?
Thank you. My business is in the North End. And I look at the North End as an amazing opportunity to transform Newport's future into a 21st century business economy. When we look at what we can do with that massive space there, it really needs to revolve around how is it going to benefit the year-round residents? What are the things that we, the year-round residents, need? Number one, 21st century jobs. Okay, I'm a proven job creator. I started a company in this town. I've created jobs for engineers, for digital marketing folks. These are non-hospitality jobs. We should be out trying to find more companies that can move into town and bring those types of jobs here. So jobs, number one, with that space. Number two, housing. We all know the issue we have there, and workforce housing has to be a major, major component of what happens in the North End. Look, there's 13,000 housing units in Newport. It's not that many. You add 200, 300, 400 to that number, that really moves the needle, and we can do that in the North End. The third is transportation, right? We don't like the traffic. We love those visitors. We depend on them for our economy. But man, it would be great if they all parked in the North End and they were trolleyed into town on some beautiful tram system or electric buses or something. So that needs to be a major component of the North End, really to relieve what happens in downtown. I think the daily visitors would appreciate that as well. And the last is amazing recreational facilities for our kids and great open spaces.
Okay, Mark, I gotta interrupt you. Thank you. Steph, you're next.
To be the place to be for travel and tourism, that we focused too much on that and lost sight of our year-round residents and what it means to be a resident for it. And, you know, I grew up here, and we've lost that sense of community that Newport always had, where families take care of families, they take care of their neighbors, there's a connection to our city government. And I feel as though through our pursuit of having a thriving travel and tourism industry, that we've lost all of that and all the benefits that it brought to our long-term residents. We need that for our next generations to grow up in and to be able to help provide them with a support system through their education, through going through the school system, and to be able to have opportunities once they graduate, to be able to stay here and to have families here. So I just feel as though, you know, we should be able to have both and not lose sight of what our residents need. I just don't think that we're really listening to what our residents want from our community. Thank you.
Katie?
Yeah, Stephanie, I think that was really well said. I have heard from a lot of community members in going door to door, and from the folks that I've met with, they do feel like they are not as considered as much as our tourists are. I can say that I also feel that way. When I see concerns, I have Airbnbs moving about, people leaving debris and causing nuisance in my own neighborhood. And so you know, for personal reasons, I think it's something we need to make sure we're addressing as we move forward. Obviously, everything is a balance. There are certainly tax dollars that come along with having a tourism industry, but we certainly can't focus on that. I agree with Stephanie, how she said that we've been focusing on it sort of more exclusively for a long time. I think that now is the time, if not yesterday, to focus back on our 12-month residents, to make sure that we are focusing on being a family community. That is really important. There are other ways that we can make up the tax dollars. You know, we need to be focusing, as others have mentioned, on making sure we're bringing in other types of businesses, not solely focusing on tourism. We need to focus on sustainability for our own community, as we know that we need to create resilient futures for our own folks and residents here in Newport. And I think that's really important, is making sure that we're shifting the balance so it's not leaning more towards tourism and it's focused more so on our residents.
Thank you. Sai?
I think where we are hearing frustrations from residents, it's that the council has been very focused on adapting to huge influx of tourism that we have. And the changes to the tourism industry and the challenges on the local neighborhoods like Airbnb, that they would just like a little bit more focus on them and how we keep this community working for and accommodative to them. This isn't a zero-sum equation. I think we can focus on two areas where there's natural overlap. The first, to Kate's immediate point, is resiliency, and the second is transportation. I recently chaired the governor's working group on transportation infrastructure when he transitioned to office. There's an incredible amount of resourcing available at the federal level that we should be pursuing as a community that'll not only make Newport more attractive for tourists when they come through year round, will also make Newport a better place for our residents who need better ways to get around this island and more certainty around the resiliency efforts that we need to put in place to keep our heads financially and literally above water. I think we should do two things on this front that will benefit this community across the board. The first is I think we need to hire a grant writer to help us pursue these federal fund dollars specifically on these two areas of focus. And the second, I think we need a project manager to help us actually execute on these projects and to get them done on a comprehensive basis.
Thank you. Ames?
I think we need a homestead tax. I think we absolutely need to raise summer residents' taxes and lower your taxes, residents of Newport's taxes, by 2/3. And I don't think that's going to turn off the tap when it comes to tourism dollars. People that own 10, 15, $20 million houses, it's not the only one they own, and they can afford to pay it. So the people that are feeling like they're getting priced out, that can help. This also includes renters. It's not exclusive to property owners, people that are also renting. And that's where we work together to find a way in which to do it. These are very important things to me. And again, it's not going to turn off the money when it comes to the tourism tax, tourism money revenue rather. It's just going to be able to save you 2/3 of what you're currently paying.
Jeanne-Marie?
We've worked for years to try and balance this. There's a dashboard put out by the tourism industry. They charge or they supply Newport with a hotel tax a percentage, meals and beverage, cruise ship tax for every individual on that cruise ship. And anybody who noticed the cruise ship out there, 4,000 people at $4 a head, whether they come into Newport or not. Parking fees, event fees, and the real estate taxes for the largest hotels. So we do need to balance. In the North End, my idea in 2006 started right here in this building, Innovate Newport. And the blue and green economy certainly will have year-round jobs with paid-for health insurance. And that's what a lot of the young people are looking for. Transitioning, working for hotels and restaurants when you're in college is fine. But when you want to live here, it's tough. They make a lot of money in the summer and none in the winter. So I think really, I think we do balance the needs. I just think that we need to continue to work on our economy and supplying the jobs.
And Mark?
Thank you. Look, our city is nourished and depends on tourists, right? They feed our economy. And most of us who live here year round, we have the love-hate relationship, right? We're glad they're here to support our economy. We don't like the nuisances, the traffic, the not being able to eat out on a Saturday night in July without a 2-week reservation, all of that. The parking issues. I don't believe Newport is in balance today. And I am going to sound like a broken record. Everything I vote on in city council will be Newport for locals first. I believe our city budget is out of balance. Okay, I said it earlier, 87% of the money that runs this city, 87% comes from property tax. Are we responsible for 87% of the expenses of running this city? I think the tourists need to pay more of their fair share. I think there is a massive amount of wealth that moves through this city, and we are not harvesting enough of that outside wealth for Newport City government and funding our programs. Our schools, our roads, our infrastructure, our police department, everything is starving for more funding. And we could easily add $5, $6, $7, $8 million budget, $8 million to our annual budget of $100 million by harvesting more money from the tourists. They need to pay more of their fair share, and that's how I'll vote on every issue.
Thank you all. Before we get to some questions from the audience, we have a few quick hit questions, you will have 30 seconds to respond to. These are essentially yes or no questions, and you have the option to provide a little bit of context to your answer. This election day, Newport voters will be asked to decide whether marijuana businesses should be allowed to operate in the city, which is question number 4 on the ballot. Will you vote for or against the state's licensing of these businesses in Newport? Jeanne-Marie?
I'm voting against it. We have the Navy, which really is a very large employer in the city of Newport. And I believe that they even have signs up outside, if you see, that if they're caught with that. That goes for the contractors too.
Lynn?
Frankly, I have not made up my mind on this question. I'm glad that it's on the ballot for the residents to decide, but I see the pros and cons, and I am still weighing my options on this vote. I can see that there could be a loss of revenue, but I also see that we have contractors who prohibit cannabis use, and we have to be careful with parking and traffic. So I'm still open to this one. Thank you.
Ames?
I think it's pretty clear where I stand on that. I will vote for it because it does generate revenue. But I will only entertain 13% bids so that we can create, instead of 3%, 6% revenue from zero. So yes.
Steph?
I support it if it's going to supply more tax dollars into our economy, and if there are certain restrictions on its public use, like what we have for alcohol and smoking. We have to be cognizant of others in the community, such as families and children, and we should be respectful of those that don't want their children exposed to it. Thank you.
Mark?
No. Look, we have issues with tourists partying too hard, and nuisances from Airbnbs and folks coming out of bars drunk and carousing all night. We don't need a bunch of stone tourists walking down Thames Street. It's throwing fuel on the fire. My answer is no. The only thing I would say yes to is medical purposes. I'm happy to give up the tax revenue and have folks buy their stuff in Fall River.
Kate?
Yes, it's legal in this state and it's an opportunity for us to have tax dollars. So, rather than going to Portsmouth and providing them the tax dollars and then bringing it to where they can legally use it in Newport in their home, I think it's important that we are finding the tax dollars and that we can utilize that to, for example, put into our public schools or into our area.
Khamsyvoravong?
No, the realistic reality here is that we need to think about where this is going to go, and the only space for a facility like this is the North End. So when we talk about high-paying jobs, I don't think we need medical marijuana.
Thank you. Do you support reconvening the Charter Commission and hiring a consultant to examine language and matters of equity in the Commission's numerous recommendations for changes to the city's charter that were recently rejected or tabled by the current council? I'm gonna go in the same order. So Jeanne-Marie?
It would be up to a vote of the council whether or not we would proceed with this. I do know the charter that commission members worked very hard over about 8 months to produce what they did. So I kind of, I let it go for a while.
Lynn?
Yes, I would support convening a charter. But first of all, what I would like to say is what I really support is us taking a really hard look at the charter and the language that's in it, because some of it is archaic, and we have to modernize it. And so I do think that we could take another look at the charter. Yes, thank you.
Ames?
I think we spend a lot of money on consultants, and if we were to sit down at a table and perhaps do the work to create 80% of a solution, and then hire a consultant to help us sort through the other 20% instead of vice versa, that would be smart.
Steph?
Yes, I think that we should, being on the Charter Review Commission, one of the goals that we had was to ensure that the charter reflects diversity, inclusion, equity, and offers fair representation to the citizens of Newport, but to also give voice back to the citizens. There were 2 items that we proposed to go directly to the ballot, and that was the mayoral selection, which council currently chooses, and the term limits, which we do not have. And both were rejected. So I think that reconvening the commission would give us the opportunity to look at those again. Thank you.
Mark?
The closer the citizens are to the power center of Newport city government, the better the city runs. The more your opinions are reflected in our government, the better the city is. I would have liked to see more of the charter review show up on this year's referendum. There are other things I would like to see reviewed, increasing the power of referendum for citizens who may not be familiar with it, but I think that we should make it easier for the voters of Newport to challenge the power of city council
Thank you,
with
Mark.
referendums.
Kate?
Yes, I think that it's important that we make sure we listen to what the community brought forth in the Charter Review Commission. I think it's also important that we don't create a conflict of interest and we look at some of those items that may be a little more difficult for city council to look at and bring directly to the citizens. For exactly what was mentioned before is that sometimes something that works against them, really getting the council in the way, really should go to you all and the rest of us with our single vote. Yes, I think it's important that we look at the charter again.
And Cy?
Yes, I'm an attorney, and these are complex documents, but it's enormously important that we get this right and that our citizens understand what it is that controls how our city government operates. So I absolutely think we should revisit the charter review.
All right. Lightning round question is, do you believe that term limits would be appropriate for the Newport City Council? Jeanne-Marie?
I believe we have term limits every election. If you don't like the way somebody is doing business, then you vote for somebody else.
Lynn?
Yes, I said on the floor that I do not agree philosophically with term limits. I believe that elections are term limits, and I think we have an issue sometimes with people just don't trust politicians. I think that some of that comes out with some of these recommendations, and I can understand that, but just philosophically, I don't agree with term limits for president, for governor, or for city council.
Eames?
Well, my grandfather was a senator from Rhode Island, from the state for 36 years. He served this state with integrity. And so that obviously is a long time and would lead me to say, no, but I think there should be term limits. I think there should be term limits for Congress. Instead of getting fat and happy and ultimately being able to protect that position and guarding power, instead of losing focus for what you got into this in the first place for.
Thank you. Steph?
Yes, I think that we definitely need term limits, and we need them because it helps new voices to emerge in our community. It creates the type of participatory democracy that our city deserves, and it encourages fair representation on the council. Not to have them denies the people a voice in the democratic process. Thank you.
Mark?
I agree with Jean and Lynn on this one. I don't think we should have term limits. I think you folks are the term limits. If you like somebody, you shouldn't be restricted for voting for them just because they've been around for 8 years or 10 years or 16 years. It probably means they've been doing a good job. What I would support as a charter change is actually extending terms. I think city council being only 2 years, everybody is constantly campaigning and worried about losing votes. Okay, If you lengthen the term limits, folks can worry about doing what's right instead of chasing the vote every other year.
Thank you. Kate?
Yes, I support the concept of term limits. I think that ultimately this is something that, as was suggested by the community, should go to the voters, because I think this is something that we all should decide as a group, as a community.
And Sarah?
Generally speaking, I do support term limits, but I think when we look locally at the appetite that there is typically to run for office, we need to be realistic about the limitations that we have. Right? We have 3 ward councilors right now who are running, none of which are being challenged in the election. So I think we need to think realistically about how we keep the ranks of our elected offices filled, and that in this instance at the local level, we don't term limits.
Thank you. Moving on from the lightning round, we have some questions that have been submitted from the audience. If more than one person submitted a question on the same topic, the organizers may have combined the questions to best address the subject matter. I'm going to go back to the order from question 1. So just keep that in mind, and we have 1 minute to respond. How do you plan to involve the immigrant entrenched Hispanic community in the growth of the city, given the crucial role they play in our tourism and service industry? And what is the status of the multilingual plan that the council voted on? Steph.
Well, I think first and foremost that we need to solicit that community to find out what they need from our city and what opportunities that we need to provide for them to thrive in our city, for housing and for jobs and for education. So I think the most important thing is, when you are looking at a process, is to directly involve your stakeholders in determining how best to help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeanne-Marie?
All of the things that are being recommended certainly cost money. And with the population of Hispanic new learners in our school from 3% to 18%, it is important that we're able to assimilate the kinds of programs that will give them the opportunity to succeed in our community long-term if they choose to stay here. It's troubling to me that we don't have more opportunities to interact. I certainly see a good number of workers around here, and I do believe that we need to expose them to more of our employers.
Thank you. Lynn?
Thank you. Housing obviously is a major problem for our immigrant population. And this is something, of course, that we're working on in the north end of the city. Also, as far as the city's responsibility is to make sure that everyone has access to all of the information at City Hall and be able to fill out documents and to be able to, have access to everything that's at City Hall. So we are looking at our affirmative action plan, and my choice would be to make sure that we have someone at City Hall who speaks Spanish fluently in order to help people with their forms and with the issues at City Hall.
Eames?
They absolutely need a voice, and I think the key is being able to keep them here. And how do you do that? Affordable housing. I went online, it's $2,150 a month for a 450 square foot space in Newport. Not to mention first and last months for security deposit. How is that feasible for anyone, let alone someone in the service industry just trying to get by, just trying to pay their bills? So affordable housing is absolutely where it starts.
Mark?
So once upon a time, the Irish were the immigrants, and then it was the Italians, and now it's the Hispanics. From my perspective, I have never met an immigrant in Newport that didn't want to work hard, and I respect people who work hard. Anybody, whether they're Hispanic or any other country that you're immigrating from, you want to work hard. we should make a place for those folks. Newport does have a labor shortage, right? In the summertime, our restaurants, our hotels, our hospitality industry, they're importing folks from Europe and housing them in dorms just to get enough workforce labor. So we need to find ways to welcome those people, integrate those people into our economy, but hardworking people. I'm not a believer in handouts. I'm not a believer in a social welfare state. I want hardworking people in Newport, and we should be doing our best to welcome them.
Kate?
So as part of the campaigning process, I had the pleasure of meeting with a few folks from Conexión Latina to ask questions and find out some of the things that exactly this question asks. What are the needs of the Latino community? How can City Council help them? And I heard some pretty interesting things, that I think we can help work. I did hear about this multilingual plan. I don't know the status of it. I'm hoping that gets rolled out very quickly. I heard stories about folks wanting to get married, not being able to if they don't speak English because there's no one to interpret for them. So the members of Conexión Latina are able to go in there with plan notice and help them out. And that's really a sad sight for our city, that with 10% of our population Spanish speaking, that we don't offer more folks at City Council, in our police department who speak languages that represent our community. So that is really important, that our city reflects the people who live here, and we need to focus on making sure we're having our workforce that is representative of our community.
Thank you. And Kate? I'm sorry, that was you.
Okay, fine.
So do my homework for you. All right, I have another question, and I'm gonna go to the lineup from question number 2. Did I get everybody? No. Sorry.
Well, as somebody who actually has been first generation here, I think I've got some perspective on this issue. And I'll tell you that part of the problem is that it is scary interacting with government when you're new to this country. And making resources available isn't enough. When I chaired the state's largest drinking water utility that had a large minority population that we were serving, we addressed this in 2 ways. The first is we have to do active outreach. We need to go to the doors and meet them where they are. The second is we actually have to start talking openly about what our composition of government is and start reporting publicly on exactly how much of our community representation we have in our public offices. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the lineup from question number 2. And the question is, if elected, how will you continue to engage residents in your work on the City Council? And what is one way you would like to see our city government work better and smarter for our residents? And Cy first.
Well, I think you have to start by doing what I've been doing, which is actually get out there into the community and spend time at the doors. Like I said, I've knocked on over 4,000 doors over the course of this campaign in every single neighborhood. We need to keep getting out into our community. But we also need to make it easier for residents to engage with us. And I think that's by creating a system like 311 that other major municipalities use to engage with their residents when they have complaints. You shouldn't have to call the police every single time you have a problem in your neighborhood. There should be an easier way to flag issues that you have and to reach out to the people that can actually help you get solutions.
Thank you. And let's see, sorry, Mark.
I think sometimes Newport may be governed by the squeaky wheel mentality. Whoever shows up at city council meetings and sort of screams the loudest is the voice that's heard the most. I would love to implement technology to bring the voice of the voter closer to city council, which means every time we're talking about something substantial, wouldn't you like an official email from the city of Newport saying, these are our options. You tell us what you want. That's a little bit of technology. It's easy to implement, and it will bring the voters closer to what actually happens in city council meetings and the way that city council would be voting.
Thank you, Mark. Jeanne-Marie.
Over the years, we have expanded our use of technology with the city website and sending out certain information. We also have invested in the media so that people can view it from their home. It's important to have people at the meeting, But it's also important for people to want to know what's going on in the city. A lot of times they don't even call until it creates a problem for them. I have no lack of phone calls during the course of the day, and I certainly try to answer every one. I think we've made the effort. We certainly have made the financial investment in the improvements in City Hall to communicate with people that come in. Also, I would mention there is an app, translator, and I recommended that they might want to put those in various departments so that people can understand.
Lynn?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Let's see, if elected, how will you continue to engage residents in your work on the city council? And what is one way you would like to see our city government work better and smarter for our residents?
I work with residents every day. Every day I get phone calls, every day I get emails, every day I work with community groups. I work with Newport Partnership for Families. I work with Newport, the Edward King Senior Center. I am engaged with residents all the time. They call me, I'm accessible, and I help them with their problems. How can we be friendly? Well, since COVID, we changed the way our city works with technology in the council chamber. We invested almost $500,000 of COVID money into creating better technology in the council chamber so that people have more interaction with the council. But I am available, and anyone who calls me or emails me, I am there for them.
Thank you. Kate?
So I have to agree with a lot with what Cy said before. I think it's important that we utilize the technology and send out emails. All that's really important, but there's lots of residents who aren't on email. A lot of our seniors, the only way to really reach them is where they are and to speak to them one-on-one. And it's really important to learn about what people are thinking by talking to them one-on-one. What would I do? I'd like to keep up the efforts that I've been doing in campaigning and meeting with residents, maybe in small groups, showing up once a week at a coffee shop to meet with people. I think Councilor Bova has a wonderful newsletter that she sends out, and I think that's an important way to be transparent to the community and be sharing what's happening behind closed doors and the types of things that are happening. Those are just a couple of examples of ways that I would try and engage with the community and making sure that we're reaching people who aren't necessarily on the internet, as well as sort of holistically looking at everyone and meeting people where they are.
Ames?
Radical transparency, speaking with local news outlets and conveying the issues, explaining them very clearly so that voters understand exactly what they are, and also being completely available. Anyone can reach out to me. I'm overly so willing to hand out my contact information. Probably not the smartest idea, but whatever. I am committed to that radical transparency.
And Steph?
I think everybody's made some really great points and suggestions. Like Kate had mentioned, a newsletter would be helpful, whether that's mailed out to the residents on a quarterly basis or contained in the stores where you're at the register, you pick up a newsletter and you can see what's going on with your city government and with your city. But I also think that we need to hear from the citizens as to how they want to receive their communication. We should be having quarterly or even on a yearly basis, at the very least, workshops strictly for public comment, where people can come in front of city council and just voice their opinions on what is going on in their city that they're troubled by. But we need to open up more opportunities to hear from our citizens and to hear what they want and what they need from their government. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Did I get everything? In the event the Navy hospital land becomes available during your term, what would you propose doing with it? And going on to the order from question 3, so Ames?
Affordable housing, absolutely. Without question. That's it.
Okay.
I think it's important that we review what the suggestions were from those master planning documents that the community was engaged with. We look at how we can implement a variety of different types of opportunities within them. I agree that there needs to be some housing, but there also should be some level of support spaces for green space, for commercial, for retail, that sort of thing. So really looking to those documents that the community has engaged upon to figure out exactly what the appropriate mix is based on the available land that is that comes online.
Sorry.
I'll say this about housing, if we build it, I don't want to put more housing in the flood zone. I do think we need to think seriously about how we maximize the use of that space, and that should include continuing to focus on high-paying industries like the Blue Economy Hub, but also including public spaces where our residents can continue to enjoy the beautiful waterfront.
Mark?
Middle-class housing obviously is a priority, but that is a beautiful, beautiful spot in Newport. It's waterfront. It's an amazing property. I do think it should be developed into some recreational use as well. I would love to be hanging out at a park over there, a baseball field, places that our kids can go and enjoy, and other recreational centers. It's a unique property. We shouldn't just try and put boundaries on it for just housing or just 21st century jobs. I think a mixed use approach is best over there.
Steph?
I do agree with Mark. I think that mixed use for that property would be beneficial. Citizens in the north end don't have readily available access to the waterfront. So having some type of park or an opportunity for them to be able to take advantage of that. But, I'm hearing a lot about high paying jobs. And unfortunately, due to lack of opportunities, there are citizens in Newport that are not able to obtain a high-paying job. So I think that we need to look at job opportunities for those citizens where they can start out and gain the experience that they need that will eventually help them to obtain either an education or the training they need to search out and find a high-paying job. So maybe having some retail availability in that space could be beneficial. Thank you.
Lynn?
Thank you. We have discussed this quite a bit with this Navy housing, and one of the things that just keeps coming up is a mixed use development there. Certainly housing, some retail, and there was a resolution several years ago that specified some sort of park and access to the water, which I would certainly support, and boating activities there. It is just prime property for recreational space.
And Jeanne-Marie?
We've been talking about this property for so long. And, you wonder if it's ever going to come. I do believe that we should take advantage of perhaps someone that wants to work with the Navy Blue Economy to produce higher paying jobs with benefits. We also have access to the whole dock area. We did that years ago when we first asked for that property, and it was granted through the Park Service. So there will be an opportunity if we ever get the property for Newporters to enjoy the waterfront.
Great. Okay, I'm going to push my luck with this last one. I'm combining two questions, so I apologize. And I'm going to go with the order from question number 4. How do you define affordable housing and workforce housing? And what will you do as a city councilor to keep rent from increasing? And Lynn.
Okay. There is a difference between affordable housing and subsidized housing, and they're all based on HUD guidelines. Affordable housing is a housing that is affordable to folks who are middle income, and we need to create that housing because those are the families that are being left behind in this housing crisis. As far as subsidized housing, we are looking at possibly creating more housing in the North End area. And looking for funding for that. But they are two distinct groups. There's subsidized housing and there is affordable housing. and it gets confused.
Steph?
I think that we need to entertain the idea of having an affordable housing commission that does look at subsidized housing opportunities in the city and to ensure that what we do have doesn't expire. But this commission should be comprised of homeowners, renters, business owners, and individuals that have a background in real estate, tax, and planning. And to have them take a look at the process to see where there are opportunities for us to provide the best options for the citizens of Newport, including rental options. Thank you.
Stephanie, I think that's a great idea. Ultimately, 7 folks, one person, no one's gonna solve this on their own. That, you know, as Lynn mentioned, there are differences in what they are, but we don't have availability for either right now. Where there's a shortage of both affordable and subsidized housing in this city. So we need to look at these ideas holistically. How do we create more housing? We're just at a shortage for both. Where are they located? How do they relate to other portions of the city? That's all part of master planning work that we need to make sure we're looking at broadly across the entire city. And if we start to do that appropriately in the right places for the right folks, that's how we'll be able to stabilize our rents and our home prices as we move forward. But I agree with Stephanie that we need to really make sure we're looking at this, not just 7 people making this decision. We need to look at it more broadly.
Sorry.
All right, so this is not my audition for staff's commission, but I was the state's liaison for the state treasury to Rhode Island Housing for a number of years. I did for 10 years work at Webster Bank, the community banking group, leading government financing projects like public housing. So I think I understand this space pretty well. I will tell you that having walked in Newport Heights, Newport has the 2nd highest concentration of capital A affordable housing in the state. The problem that the folks have up there is that there's nowhere to move to from that point. That's what we need to focus on developing right now, is a pipeline of housing that helps get those folks to the next stage of homeownership and of housing, so that frees up the available housing stock that they're currently on.
James?
I agree, and I think we need to improve both. And also incentivize those that want to work, that are working, and that just can't afford to pay the rent. And so that's where the improvement needs to be.
Jeanne-Marie?
Affordable housing is a very nebulous term. What's affordable to you may not be affordable to me or you or you. I think we have to understand Newport right now is built out, basically, and it's up to other communities, and I am talking Middletown and Portsmouth, to really, they have expansive land to build some starter homes and make them affordable. It's important, and it's not that far if their job is in Newport. But we need to share in this responsibility with other communities. State comp plan says every community should provide at least 10%. We're at 17%. Portsmouth is at 2%. Go figure.
Mark?
So we have to give kudos to prior city councils for the low income or subsidized housing, right? They did their job. We're top of the rankings in the state for that. It's the focus on middle income folks. I have people who work at BedJet with great jobs, right? $50,000 to $100,000 a year jobs. And I've had 2 people heartbroken leaving Newport because with those jobs, they still can't afford to rent or buy here. So I'm a believer in a very strong city council. City council still has yet to exercise every power it has available to it to fight this problem. It has to be fought on all fronts. Changing zoning issues to allow higher densities and accessory uses, making it easier to build things. We all know how hard it is to build something in this city. Attacking, the Airbnbs and really focusing on every single front. At the end of the day, it's a tough problem. It's a macroeconomic problem, but we can make a difference.
Thank you, Mark. All right, I want to thank everyone for their thoughtful responses to all of this evening's questions. At this time, we'd like to give you an opportunity to issue closing statements. You will have 90 seconds to leave the constituents with your final thoughts on your candidacy for Newport City Council. And we're going to start with Kate.
Lynn's getting to work out over here. I have no doubt that my skills will provide the opportunity to help community in the direction, move the direction of Newport forward. I promise to advocate for you and keep each resident in mind to create a rising tide for all Newporters. There are a lot of issues that we have in front of us, which are really opportunities. Looking at the transportation master plan, multimodal transportation, which creates safe and dedicated areas for people to move around. We'll never really solve traffic on colonial roads without looking at other ways to move through our city. Housing availability and affordability, I think, is really important. We've all touched on that. We all recognize that it's a concern that most of us deal with, probably in this room and online and beyond, often. How we develop our city into a sustainable and resilient blue and green economy, that's really important. We need to start planning ahead for this. Making sure we're providing the quality of life that our residents are looking for is really important. Supporting the community and its residents is something that is the most important thing for me. I promise to advocate for you. Looking forward to servicing you as your city councilor, and I hope to have earned your vote November 8th. Thank you.
Ty?
I know what you're all thinking after 2 hours. I wish somebody had talked about housing and cared. So you've got some good news here, right? You have a slate of candidates who are all really agreeing that we need to refocus on resident support and help. I think the question right now is the type of people you need to elect. I think that Newport would be well served by people who have the skills, the work ethic, and the temperament to actually work together to get things done. I have entrusted my entire career by both Republicans and Democrats to focus on working on the exact types of issues that Newport is grappling with today. So what I'm asking for is that Newporters give me their trust and an opportunity to work for them. I'm hoping that I can ask for your vote on November 8th. And if you need more information about me, feel free to reach out or contact me through my website, xayfornewport.com. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark?
So I'm not known for being soft-spoken or eloquent. I'm a business guy. That's what I'm known for. And I know how to run businesses. I know how to run businesses successfully, profitably, how to eliminate waste, and how to follow the money. That's what I want to bring to Newport City government. So your choice when you vote this November 8th, do you want a guy in there who knows how to run a business? Because the city is a business. We have revenue, we have expenses, we have people. Most importantly, we have services to provide. And in business, your customer is the most important person. I have a relentless approach to customer service in my business. If I'm on city council, you are the customers. I will have a relentless approach towards making sure our city services satisfy you. And there's one thing I want to talk about, which wasn't touched on tonight, which is public safety. That is at the top of my list. We still rank in the bottom 30% of cities for crime. I want a higher focus on public safety, a bigger and more well-funded police department. I want to be able to walk down every street in Newport and feel safe. We haven't been enforcing traffic violations, noise violations. My house gets ravaged by motorcycle exhaust at the stop sign I'm at. So, those are some of the more basic city service things that I am oriented on. I love the big picture stuff. It's really important. Long-term planning, housing, we had great issues tonight, but the details are important. City services are important.
Lynn?
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to the voters tonight. I have really enjoyed this conversation, but we have really just grazed the tip of the iceberg on so many of these complex issues. It's hard to answer a question in just 2 minutes and be able to be concise and to be able to say everything that you really want to say. But what I do want to say also tonight is that I am focused on the residents, and I have been since 2014. And I understand that there is a balance, but I do work with groups, and I work with the residents every day, as I said, through the Newport Partnership for Families and through the Edward King Senior Center, and developing action plans and policies that make the city better. So I promise to be the same responsive, accessible city councilor that I have been. And if you have any other questions, please email me at ceglie@gmail.com. I'm number 7 on the ballot, and I'm asking for your vote on November the 8th. Thank you so much.
Jeanne-Marie?
Yes, I'd like to thank you once again for the opportunity to present our views on issues affecting all people in the city of Newport. I'd also like to thank my fellow candidates for their enthusiasm, courage, and commitment they've shown by running for the Newport City Council. Although I've been on the council for many years, my service has given me the experience and the commitment to move Newport forward. Each new term presents those elected with new challenges and new ideas. I'm confident the upcoming council will move Newport in a direction which will benefit all residents and businesses while preserving Newport's historic legacy. I ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
So I'm running for city council because I'm a concerned citizen for the majority of the topics that we discussed tonight, but primarily because we lack an equitable community. We had the development of the North End Urban Development Plan, and how important that is to the citizens in the North End. They feel segregated by that plan, and they feel segregated because their voices weren't heard as to what they needed in their community. And I think that we have a divide between our city government and the people, which has drowned out the voice of the community, leading to a lot of the issues that we have today. I'm an 8th generation Newporter. My family's been here for 8 generations, so I have very deep roots in this community. And, it's been sad to see the direction that this city has gone into, because a lot of people that I've grown up with can no longer afford to stay here. They can no longer afford to be part of the only community that they have ever known. I can't imagine living somewhere else. So I have very deep concerns with the direction that this city is headed in. There doesn't seem to be enough opportunities to address the climate change crisis that we are currently experiencing. So I feel as though that there's a lot of opportunities out there for us to have a healthy and well community, the one that I grew up in.
Thank you, Steph.
I would be honored to earn your vote. Thank you.
Eames?
You definitely talked about a lot of issues, so I won't talk about it anymore, but my big thing is removing ego from the equation. And I am passionate about a lot of these issues, and that can come across, but the bottom line is I am even more passionate about getting things done. And so removing ego from the equation, having conversations with people that know about the issues, and then solving those problems. And also conveying with clarity to those news outlets, to you, what's going on. That's really important to me. Also, lastly, high-speed internet. I hear all about these high-paying jobs and how can we possibly attract high-paying jobs like techies when their Zoom call with California, cuts out halfway through or whatever. That's just an example. So not to mention if you want to watch a movie with your family. Anyone's internet gone out? But it's a lot of people, certainly mine. So that's one issue that's important to me, and I think that people care about it. Because if we want to attract those high-paying jobs, we have to have internet. It's 2022.
Thanks, everybody. That concludes tonight's candidates forum. On behalf of the host organizations in Newport this week, Involve Newport, the League of Women Voters, and our fabulous timekeepers tonight, and the Newport County and Greater Newport Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for attending. We look forward to seeing you on Election Day, November 8th. Tell your friends and get out and vote. Yeah, I was like,